Aroha Media welcomes you to another tutorial for you in the character have checked the dissection and rigging, you can now save a copy of the file to animate the 3/4 walk cycle. Let's name it Character Walk Cycle 3/4 Angle. You will recollect that in the tutorial on side walk cycle, you created a reference guideline to mark the ground level. In this tutorial too, you'll do the same, only there is a slight difference. Let's see what it is. Double-click the boy symbol to enter it and click on the Insert Layer tab at the bottom of the layer stack. Rename the layer as Ground Level. Observe that the 3/4 character view is perspective view. In this view, the character will approach the screen diagonally. So, the ground level cannot be horizontal. It should be diagonal. Let's draw this ground reference line on the new layer. Select the Line tool. The best way to decide the diagonal angle of the line is to match it with the direction at which the shoes are pointing. You can also refer to the direction at which the eyes are looking. That makes your job a lot easier. Change the color of the line through the Stroke Color tool. In this case, you can choose the color red. Situate the line close to the right foot. Now, since this is a perspective view, you will need another line that will create depth in the scene. The angle of this line needs to be just slightly different from that of the first line. As you go further, you'll find that these two lines actually form the line of movement for the left and the right foot. Adjust them so they suit the 3/4 view. Here comes a pointer regarding guides. To create a 3D guide for a 3/4 perspective, you need to draw lines that give the screen some more depth. You'll call it the Z-axis, your tool to create a 3D effect in view. Select the Line tool and draw such a line. Make the required adjustments till it looks okay. You will need such guidelines in front of the character, one at its back and one directly under the center of the body. Alright, with the guides in place, you can now begin the actual animation. Just like in the sidewalk cycle tutorial, let's put the right foot forward on the first keyframe. Select the entire right leg, position the pivot point onto the waist, and rotate the entire leg forward and upward. Here is a vital pointer for you. The 3/4 front view is a perspective view. So, the different body parts need to scale up as they come closer to the screen and reduce in size when they move away from the view. Let's see how this would work. Observe closely as the foot gets lifted. It comes closer in the viewer's sight. So, it should scale up just a little bit. Bring up the Scale and Rotate dialog box with the shortcut Ctrl+Alt+S and enter the value 105 in the scale box. Repeat the same proportion again to increase the perspective effect. Now, in this view, with every movement, the position of the body parts with respect to the body can change. So, you need to account for this. When you lift your right leg, the right hips move forward as well. So, move the leg a bit forward. We will edit this part further in some time. But before that, on the same frame, let's rotate the left leg backward so it is symmetrical to the position of the right leg. Select the entire left leg. This time, again think about perspective. Place the pivot point at the left side waist corner. Now, using the free transform tool, rotate it backwards. Zoom the view and adjust it with the tummy line. Back to the right leg. Again, select it and begin adjusting it. You will easily see that the ground guides are extremely helpful in maintaining proportion and direction when we make these rotations and adjustments. Remember that in the 3/4 front view, the side that is closer to the view will always dominate. In our case, it is the right side. Okay, before you go for further adjustments, let's see how the right foot forward action would affect the upper body. Select all the upper body parts, the head, the neck, position it on the waist, and then with the free transform tool, bend the upper body forward slightly. You can see that the body is looking much more balanced than before. Another thing to be considered here is that when the character lifts its right foot forward, it should also sway slightly rightward. To achieve this effect, select the right leg and use the free transform tool to skew it towards the character's right side. Make further adjustments to suit the perspective. As we go ahead, we'll work on other parts as well. Like this zip part needs to be repositioned and skewed so that it suits the body. Before going forward, let's check the hands. Select the entire right hand. Move the pivot point to the character's shoulder. Since the right leg is forward, the right hand has to rotate backward. With the free transform tool, rotate the hand. You will see the stiffness at the elbow joint. To solve this issue, select the palm and forehand and rotate it slightly forward for a much more relaxed right hand. Magnify the view and adjust the outlines of the hands with each other to smoothen the borders. Now, the left hand acts opposite to the right hand. So, select it and rotate it forward slightly. It is coming closer to the viewer as well. So, for the feel of perspective, you need to scale it up. Press Ctrl+Alt+S to call up the Scale and Rotate dialog box and input 105 as the scale value. Magnify the view and adjust the outlines for smoothness. Remember that the right hand is moving away from the viewer as it rotates backward. So, select it and scale it down to 98%. Adjust the outlines of the shoulder with the bicep part. Let's review the character's pose on the first frame now. Look at the shoes. When the foot is lifted high in the front 3/4 quarter perspective, the sole of the right shoe becomes slightly visible. You can see that the original drawing of the shoes doesn't have soles. That means the shoes need to be redrawn. To do so, double-click the right foot symbol. Before editing the original drawing, you should make a copy of the original. In Flash, you can use the concept keyframes to preserve the original drawing. Let's see how to do this. To begin with, define the duration of the walk cycle. On the timeline, click on the 25th frame and press F5 to insert frame. Then, click on the 3rd frame and press F6 to add a keyframe. Now, even if you make any changes on the 1st frame, the original drawing is preserved on the 3rd frame. Let's edit the right foot now. Come to the 1st frame and move the foot from its position for the time being. This is a group. Turn it into an editable object by selecting it and pressing Ctrl+B, the keyboard shortcut for break apart. Now, let's draw a rough sketch of what we want the shoes to look like in this pose. But what about the proportion? Well, there is a tool you can use to ensure that the volume and proportion of the body parts are consistent with each other. It is called the Now, run the timeline seeker to and fro again to see what changes are required. Now come back to the 13th keyframe. Remember that in a front 3/4 view, when the character lifts its foot, the bottom of the shoe or the sole is seen. Double-click the right foot to enter it. To extend the duration to 25 frames, click on the 25th frame in the timeline and press F5. Now, let's repeat the same procedure of editing the foot symbol we followed for the right foot here. You'll have to sketch the left foot on the 13th frame. So, for the time being, remove the existing object. Switch on the Onionskin tool at the base of the timeline to get a reference for the previous and subsequent positions. The drawing will be quite similar to the one drawn for the right foot. Use the pencil tool to draw the left shoe. Use the select tool and line tool to add parts of the shoe as depicted in the original. For the sole, again go to the color dialog box. Visit the brightness gradation bar in the right and push the slider down to select a darker shade. You can now delete the extra left shoe from the screen now and switch off the Onionskin tool. Before you exit the symbol, hold down the Alt key, click on any frame before the 13th frame and drag and drop it on the 15th frame so that the previous position can be preserved just in case something goes wrong. Double-click and exit the symbol. Run the timeline seeker back and forth to preview the keyframes. You'll find that the changes made in the left foot are not yet reflected on the main stage. So, click on the left foot layer, right-click on the selected frames, and click on the Synchronize Symbols option. Now if you run the slider again, you'll find that the new sketch is showing on the main stage. But there is still some editing to be done in the left leg. See how the calf symbol is disproportionate to the new foot symbol. Use the free transform tool and skew the calf symbol so it matches the shoes. Again, drag the timeline seeker to preview the overall effect. If you feel any part needs changes in scale, you can call the Scale and Rotate dialog box by pressing Ctrl plus Alt plus S and make the required alteration. Coming back to the stage and running the timeline seeker again, you can see that the left calf symbol needs some editing. For this, double-click on the symbol and enter it. Before beginning the editing, extend the duration clicking on the 25th frame and pressing F5. Here too, you insert a keyframe on the 15th frame to preserve the original position. On the 13th and 15th frames, press F6 to add keyframes. Now, switch on the outline mode and use the selection tool to edit it with reference to the earlier frames. After you are satisfied with the editing, double-click to come out to the boy symbol to view the result. To refresh the animation, click on the layer with the left calf symbol, right-click on the selected frames and select Synchronize Symbols. The Synchronize Symbols function not only updates the recent changes made in the layer, but also ensures that the changes are seen at the exact frame where they are done. Drag the timeline seeker to and fro to see the changes inside the symbols are updated in the animation on the stage. If you preview the animation again, you'll find a glitch in the left calf symbol at the 13th keyframe. To resolve this, select the object, select the Free Transform tool, and skew the symbol to make the necessary change. Now, enter the left calf symbol again to edit the 13th keyframe again, where you can see the pants are overlapping the shoes. This time, let's use the Sub-Selection tool as it will give us more options to edit the outlines. The shortcut for the Sub-Selection tool is A. Now we'll turn to the right leg. We have seen that its proportions are looking odd, so double-click on it to begin editing. Go to the 13th frame and create a keyframe, thereby pressing F6. Again, to preserve the original object, click on the 15th frame and press F6 to insert a keyframe there. Come back to the 13th keyframe and press Ctrl+B to break apart the object. Now, select the bottom line of the pant. Note the Straighten tool at the bottom of the toolbar. Click on it to straighten this line. Select the line above it too and click on the Straighten tool to turn it into a straight line. Do the same for all the other lines. Now, you can again create the curves to suit the original character design. animation or drag the timeline seeker back and forth. You can see that with every edit, the animation is becoming smoother and better. If you find any problems in the keyframes drawn before, you can fix the errors immediately. This will save precious time later. The next in-between comes on the 19th frame. Select the frame on all layers and press F6 to insert keyframes. Here's a pointer for you. The 7th and the 19th keyframes are identical in terms of position with just one difference. On the 7th keyframe, the left foot bends back and prepares to stretch forward, and the right foot has touched the ground, ready to stretch backwards. On the 19th frame, the right foot bends back and prepares to stretch forward, while the left foot touches the ground, ready to swing back. It's interesting that the 7th keyframes for all upper body parts, head, neck, shirt, the three parts of both the hands and the tummy are exactly the same on the 19th keyframe. So, select these keyframes, hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and drag and drop the selection onto the 19th frame as it is. Drag the timeline seeker to see what changes are needed on the 19th frame. On this keyframe, the left leg touches the ground. So, select the entire left leg and rotate it so that the left foot reaches and touches the ground. As it is beginning to go away from the viewer's side, use the shortcut Ctrl plus Alt plus S for the Scale and Rotate dialog box to scale it down. Reposition and rotate till it matches the ground guide. Now, select the right thigh symbol and bend it a bit forward. You'll have to work with the upper body exclusively on individual keyframes. Some of the upper body parts are hidden. To make that selection easier, you can work in the outline mode. Switch it on by clicking on the empty square at the top of the layer stack. First, ensure that you are on the 7th keyframe and select the entire upper body, the head, both the hands, the shirt and the tummy. Now that you have selected them, you can switch off the outline mode by clicking on the empty square again. On the 7th and the 19th keyframes, the character's 2 feet are closest to the ground. So, the height of the character will be the highest on these keyframes. So, click the up arrow keys on your keyboard to move the upper body parts upwards. To review the result, you can drag the timeline seeker back and forth. You can see that now the body is bobbing up and down according to the movement. You'll have to give the exact same effect on the 19th keyframe. To make sure it is exact, you need some guides for this. In the sidewalk cycle tutorial, we access the guides from the rulers. Let's make the rulers visible on the screen. For this, you have 3 keys. First, you can right-click on the screen and select Rulers. Second, you can go to the View menu and click on the Rulers tab. And the third way is to simply press Ctrl plus Shift plus R on your keyboard. From the horizontal ruler, drag a guide down to fix the topmost height of the character. Now go to the 19th keyframe. Again select the upper body parts of the character using the outline mode. Magnify the screen and begin moving the body parts upwards with the up arrow keys on your keyboard. Move it till the topmost part of the hair touches the guideline. Press Enter key to play the animation. You can see that the upper body animation is going well. Alright, now again After you're satisfied with the result, exit the boy symbol and come to the main stage. Select the 100th frame on the timeline and press F5 to extend the animation duration on the main stage. Press Enter on your keyboard to play the animation. Even at this later stage, you should look for problems. You can observe that the zip isn't matching the pant on some keyframes. You can enter the individual symbols again and ensure there are no cuts or leaks. You should also look closely at the outlines of body parts and match them for a smooth animation visual. Keep coming back to the main stage and previewing the results to make the animation even more perfect. That brings us to the end of the 3/4 walk cycle tutorial. We enjoyed presenting this tutorial to you. We hope you had a good time learning how quickly and efficiently you can animate a perspective walk cycle in Flash. Remember that there are several different kinds of perspectives in animation. To do well in this, we recommend you give enough time for sketching practice. Do make it a point to draw as many characters in their front, side, and 3/4 views to get the hang of this technique. Also, watch a lot of animation films and make notes about how different animators use different ways to animate walk cycles. Thank you very much for watching this presentation from Aroha Media. Happy animating!